If you're planning a trip to Japan, one of the things that you might be thinking about is how do I be polite? If you don't know this, Japanese are a very polite people. And so if you want to learn some survival techniques in terms of the language, you don't have to know lots and lots of Japanese. But if you want to know just some phrases and some words that you can use that demonstrate politeness back to them, it can go a long way. Japan with Dennis. I'm Dennis. I lived in Japan, I speak the language, and I love the Japanese culture. I'll share with you tips you need to know before you travel to Japan and key cultural things you need to do while there. I'll show you where you can go and what you can do to get off the tourist track and experience the real Japan. And learning a few Japanese words and phrases can only enrich in our experience. Nihon ni ikimashou ka? Now, this is going to be the first in several Japanese language videos that is useful to you as you tour Japan. We're also going to talk about in other videos, we're going to talk about greetings. We'll also talk about navigation. How do you figure out where you're at and how to get somewhere that you need to go. We'll also talk about the language and phrases that you need to use when you're in a setting such as you're trying to buy something or you're in a restaurant. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss those other videos. But today we're going to talk about politeness. And if you'll stay for the end, I'll give you a bonus. I'll talk about the politeness concept of bowing. When do you bow? How much do you bow? And what does that really mean? All right, one of the first words I want to teach you about politeness or regarding politeness that you'll use all the time. And I've tried to put these words in order of use. Now, I lived in Japan and I didn't just kind of speak the language. It just kind of got deeply into my blood. Every day I had to teach hour in, hour out in Japanese. And so Japanese kind of got in my blood. So hopefully I'm giving you kind of the real skinny on how it really works in Japan. All right, but in terms of politeness, the first one you'll want to use that you're going to use all the time is sumimasen. Sumimasen. Sumimasen is really just a way of saying, excuse me. The thing is, you're going to say it a lot. You probably say it a lot more than you would say in the United States in the English language. So when we say excuse me, we're almost apologizing, and that's kind of true in Japanese. But sumimasen can be used when you're trying to get somebody's attention, just like in English. We might say excuse me, and you may say, sumimasen, otoire wa doko desu ka? Okay, so you'll just say, excuse me, and then you might have a question asked. Don't worry, we'll talk about that other Japanese that I just mentioned in another video. All right, so that's one thing, but you can also use it somewhat apologetically. And the reason why you'd use it a lot is because you've come close to somebody. Maybe you've even bumped into them. The Japanese people like their space. This is interesting, but on trains and in busy cities, they don't have space. They do touch each other. And so constantly, even if they just touch somebody's shoulder or they touch you or their bag touches you or they cut in front of you, they're going to constantly say, sumimasen. Now, because you're a foreigner, they may think that you don't understand that. They may hold back saying that to you from themselves, but they'll definitely say it to each other. And if you're the first one that says that, then they'll definitely say it right back to you. So, sumimasen. Sumimasen. Now, this is a good time to teach you something about all of the Japanese words that we'll talk about, and that is that they don't have an accent on one of the words. So it's not sumimasen or sumimasen or sumimasen. No, Japanese language is considered beautiful when it's monotone. And so if you're listening to the news and listening to somebody that's speaking Japanese, they are considered beautiful if they keep all of the accents about the same. There's no definition to any specific syllable. That's not entirely true. There are some Japanese words that have a little bit of an emphasis on them, but mostly it's just across the board. So that's why we say sumimasen, sumimasen. The only thing you hear there is that I'm dragging out the masen, and I'll talk about that too. But so you'll just get used to hear that. But sumimasen, that means, of course, excuse me. Okay, the next word, I don't know if this is in the right order or not, but you use it a lot, and it's itadakimasu. Itadakimasu, itadakimasu. Really, this is especially going to be used when you're about to eat something that somebody especially gave you. I say that, but in Japan, even if they are getting ready to eat anything, they may even say it to themselves very quietly, itadakimasu. It actually means I humbly partake, and it's just kind of their way of being reverent with the food and thankful for the food that they're about to partake. Now, itadakimasu or itadaku as a verb is something that you can partake a lot of things. You can say, can I partake of you coming with me? Watashi to kitte itadakimasen ka? You can say that. But for now, I just want you to think itadakimasu right before you take a bite of any food, especially if somebody gives that to you. Now, I'll talk about this later. Right as they give it to you, that's not when you say itadakimasu. You say it as you pick up your chopsticks and you really are about to put something in your mouth. Right before you put something in your mouth, you say itadakimasu. All right, so that's itadakimasu. All right, here's another one that you'll definitely use a lot, and it's this. It's called dozo. Dozo. It's got a long O sound. Dozo. Dozo means go ahead, or you first, or whatever. We say that a lot. You go ahead. So if you're in a busy situation, and you commonly are in trains, and there's somebody trying to get through a door, and if you want them to go before you, just put your hand out and say, dozo, dozo, and that means go ahead. It's a very, very polite thing to do. Now, I'll also talk about the response to dozo. If I said in English, you go ahead, somebody might say thank you back. We'll talk about this, but somebody could say, it could go like this, dozo, and then you say, arigato, and then they're going to say, ie. Ie just means no, but in the English translation, it would be like, oh, don't worry about it. It's nothing, no biggie. And that's what ie. Ie means no, but they're really trying to say not a big deal. So let me do that again. Hai, dozo, arigato, ie. And that's the conversation. So there's 3 phrases and 3 words that you can learn there. You'll hear that a lot as well. You'll hear it and you can use it a lot, especially when you're coming close to people and you're trying to yield to them to let them go first. Put your hand out and say, dozo, and they'll say, arigato, and you'll say, yeah. It all happens very, very quickly. All right, the next word is gomenasai. Gomenasai. Now, gomenasai is really just a way of apologizing. And you're going to apologize a little more frequently in Japan than you would otherwise. You're not groveling, you're not getting on your knees and saying, I'm so sorry, I just ran over your cat. It's not that kind of apology. It's a light apology for maybe bumping into them or doing something wrong, like you were just a little bit late to an appointment. So you say, gomenasai. And then that would be an apology. And then they'll accept that. They'll just say, yeah. That means, again, we're back to no. That means, oh, it's nothing, no big deal. But gomenasai, you'll say that. You'll say that especially if you bump into people more significantly. Now, when I said sumimasen, excuse me, but if you really bump into somebody, you say, gomenasai, you're a little bit more apologetic about that. So that's gomenasai. This next one is really kind of a compliment, but you're going to run into a lot of people that are working around you. So if you're in a restaurant, somebody's working hard to serve you. As a Japanese culture, you don't need to compliment their service very much, not directly. The way you can compliment somebody who helped you, whether it's at a store or that's working at the train station and they're taking the extra mile to speak English to you, they're broken English to try to help you, and you want to be able to compliment them, certainly you can say arigato, arigato gozaimasu. We'll talk about that. But if you want to compliment them as a useful member of society, there's nothing more that they feel complimented by than that. Then what you can say is otsukaresama desu. Otsukaresama desu. So after they've helped you, hey, where's the train I'm supposed to get on? Oh, it's over here. You just go up that ramp and then it's over there. And then you say, oh, thank you so much. Otsukaresama desu. You're such a hard worker. And that's really complimenting their service. Now, just in case you're wondering, otsukaresama desu means you are a hard worker. Tsukaresama tsukareta means you're tired. And so it's really like saying, oh, you're working so hard, you must be so tired. And you're working, though you're tired, you're to help me. And so, otsukaresama desu. And so that's a huge compliment to somebody who's serving you. And it's especially good for older people who are working in train stations or at stores. If you're dealing with somebody that's really young and just served you some food, maybe that's not the right word. Just say, arigato gozaimasu. And then you'd get the food and say, itadakimasu. And that kind of extends your gratitude to them as well. Speaking of food, and remember, we'll have a whole nother video on how to be polite and the kind of interactions that you might have in a restaurant when there's food involved. But one of the things that you can do to be nice and polite is you can compliment the food as it comes out to you. We kind of do that in the United States too. Somebody puts a tray of food in front of us. We say, ooh, that looks good. Or that's so much food. We compliment that. We compliment the amount of food. That's like the best compliment in the world. Well, If you want to compliment food in Japan, what you're really complimenting is how it looks. And so the word for delicious is oishii. But to say it looks delicious, you need to learn this. Oishii desu. So means it looks that way. And so oishii desu. Oishii desu. They put the plate in front of you. Oh, oishii desu. And they'll probably blush. They'll think that's so cool that you're saying that. What you're really saying is, this food is very, very pretty. When I lived in Japan, I literally think that they think a pretty food is more important than a food that tastes good. There's no better compliment that you could give to somebody than telling them that the food is pretty. And if you look at the average dishes and the dishes that come to you in Japan, you're going to find out that they're very carefully arranged, that they're beautiful. The colors are balanced. Plate is just right. It's not like in America where we get a big old spoon of mashed potatoes and throw it in this corner, and then we get the meat, throw it over here, and there's just stuff all over the plate, and the chef kind of tries to wipe off the edges. No, it's not like that. When they're preparing your plate, it's impeccably clean, organized, colorful, and beautiful. That's why it's great when you can say, oishii desu. You're really saying this is beautiful, it looks delicious, and that's a great compliment. Now, closely related to that, the bookend for eating, so when you get it, you can say, oishii desu. Remember, you haven't eaten it yet, and so you can just say it looks good. You don't want to say it's delicious before you've tried a bite. So you'd say, oishii desu. That looks delicious. And then when you partake of it, you're going to itadakimasu. And then at the end, if they come by and you're done, you say, oishikatta desu. That's the past tense for it was delicious. Oishikatta desu. Oishikatta desu. I want to point out something here on the screen. As you look at oishikatta desu, you might see that desu, that means is. So in Japan, they put is or the conjugation of the verb at the last of the sentence. So you're going to see a lot of desu and masu. Okay, if it's a verb, it's tabemasu, ikimasu, whatever. Masu is the verb. Desu is. But I want to describe something. When you see that in writing, desu, masu, in reality, the u at the very end is really not pronounced. I say that, and I don't know the exact rule. I've never asked a Japanese person this before, but men are more likely definitely not to say the u. Saying the u even just a little bit is really feminine, and that would be very, very feminine in a much more formal situation. All right, and so a man would just say, oishikatta desu, period. No, you, right? A woman might say this, oishikatta desu, just a slight you, but it's very, very feminine, and it's very, very formal. If you're a man, I'd leave it out. If you're a woman, well, you can also leave it out, but if you want to get a little feminine, just say a little bit of the you. Not desu, not like that, but oishikatta desu, just a little bit of you, and then that's proper and very, very feminine. One of the things that's going to happen as you begin to speak any Japanese words at all, I guarantee you after you do 2 or 3 Japanese words, they're going to call you jozu desu. Jozu desu, which means you're very talented. You're very, very good. They're going to sling it out there pretty quickly, even after just a few words. And to be polite, in the United States, we would say, thank you. We won't do that in Japan. That's a little bit too ostentatious to say, you're right, thank you. I'm glad you think so. No, what we're going to do is something the Japanese always do with a compliment, especially related to our talent or our abilities. We're going to say, nope. Well, we don't say nope, but we're going to say, yeah, which means no. Yeah. We might even wave our hand like this in front of our face. Yeah. I say, yeah. No. That's the same as saying no. And then you could say this, mara desu. Mara desu, or just mara is fine. Mara means not yet, still, ongoing. I'm still working on it. And so that's the same thing. And they're very, very likely to tell you that you're talented, even if you just use a few words. You need to be able to respond politely by denying it and say, yeah, mara. And they'll appreciate that you do that. Now, in return, they're probably going to use a little bit of English as well. And even if they use just a little bit of English, you should compliment them on their English, no matter what it sounds like. And so English, the word for English is ego. Okay, just like one of those Eggo waffles, except it's not a waffle, but one of those Eggo waffles that you put in your toaster, ego is English. And so you'd say, ego wa Wa just means the subject. I'm talking about your English. So, 英語は上手です. Now, that's the same thing that they might say to you about your Japanese. 日本語 Japanese, 日本語は上手です. You say, yeah, まだまだ. Still coming. Okay, but whenever they say something in English, you say, 英語は上手です. And then they're going to say, yeah, and you say, はい。上手です. You just reaffirm that. Kind of argue a little bit about whether you're good or not, whether they're good. That's just kind of the way the conversation goes. So you'll get a long way. You'll make somebody blush and just become your best friend because you complimented their English. Now, they've studied English a long time. They really do want to try it out on you. They want to see if it works because of all the years they've been studying at school. And so if you notice their English at all and say, 英語は上手です, then they are going to really appreciate that. They feel extremely complimented, and you've become somebody super fun to interact with. They might even go home and tell them that they ran into this American or this other English speaker and say that they complimented my English today. And so they really, really like that. They get a lot of miles out of that. All right, the next word is something that you use quite a bit. You'll hear quite a bit. It's not top of the list. Sumimasen probably is more. Excuse me is probably something you're going to use more. But you're definitely going to say thank you to Japanese people. And you probably know this word, but it's got a couple nuances. So let's talk about that. And that is that arigato. Now, that's the short form of thank you. That's like saying thanks. It's a little bit casual. Arigato. What you probably want to say when you're in Japan is arigato gozaimasu. Arigato gozaimasu. Hey, there's that mas again, by the way. And if I were feminine, I wanted to be feminine about it, I might say arigato gozaimasu. All right, so I might add just a little bit of you. Definitely if you're a man, and even if you're a woman, you do not have to add that you. You can just say arigato gozaimasu. Notice that I'm drawing out the mas. And we do that in English as well. We say thank you. And if we drag that out, we just kind of mean that a little bit more. It's more socially acceptable. So, arigatou gozaimasu. Now, you can, again, as somebody does something for you over and over, you can start saying, arigato. You might even repeat it a few times. Arigato gozaimasu. And so you can say that. That's the best way to say thank you. Now, how do you say you're welcome? Well, I could tell you the word, and I will tell you the word. You may have heard it before. Doitashimashite. And that's kind of a weird word. Sounds like don't touch your mustache or don't touch my mustache. I don't know. That's what I learned a long time ago. But really, a better, more colloquial way to do that is just go back to denying it. So if I said, arigatou gozaimasu, instead of saying, you're welcome, you say, ie. You might even wave your hand in front of your mouth like this. Ie. You're really just saying, it's nothing. No big deal. But it's really their way of saying, you're welcome. So, ie. Arigato. Ie. No. I don't need that. You're good. But they're really just saying you're welcome. All right, another very polite word is asking for something, and we'll definitely talk about this more whenever you're in a restaurant situation in another video. Remember, be sure to subscribe so you get these 10, 12, 13 key language modules that you'll need to know for greeting people and for going to restaurants, for shopping, being polite, getting navigation. But the word that we care about is called onegaishimasu, and you've probably heard that before. It's really when you're requesting something. So I could want some water. And by the way, if you don't know the Japanese word for water, just say it in English. And you'll say, water, onegaishimasu. They understand the word water, and they also understand onegaishimasu. In reality, in Japanese, it's omizu onegaishimasu. Okay, so onegaishimasu. See how I'm dragging that mas out there a little bit? That feels a little bit weird whenever I talk to my wife about when we go to Japan, you got to drag that out a little bit. She says, that sounds so weird. But when you're in Japan and you hear it a couple times, you realize, no, they all do that. Sumimasen, onegaishimasu, ikimashou, dozo. So all those, they kind of like to drag out the very end. Remember, they don't have accents on those things. So that's not what adds flavor to their language, but they can stretch something out this way in the way they pronounce it, and that's really their way of accentuating something. So once again, if you ask for something, you can even ask for it in English and just say, onegaishimasu. Yep. I would like a donut. Donut, onegaishimasu. Sushi, onegaishimasu. Mizu, water, onegaishimasu. One beer, onegaishimasu. And you can add English, you can mix these things, but you're adding the politeness form, and they like that as well. Now, there's something like onegaishimasu, and you don't really need to know the difference. There is a difference in this, and that is if you're asking for something directly, you can also say kudasai. Kudasai, and so you could say, mizu kudasai. That's a little bit childlike, but you can get away with it. I would rather say omizu, or water, onegaishimasu. But I could also say, omizu kudasai, please, would you bring me a water? And so kudasai is another kind of not completely replaceable word for onegaishimasu, but it's a word that you can use to say please as well. All right, there's just one more polite form that I'll teach you. There certainly are a lot of politeness words. These are the ones that I think about when I go to Japan, what I want to use and what I used when I lived in Japan every day, and I used it very prolifically. Of course, we could talk about lots and lots and lots of ways to be polite, and maybe we'll talk about that in other videos, but these are kind of the survival politeness words and phrases that you need to know. And the last one we're going to teach you it's chotto mate kudasai. There's that kudasai. Kudasai at the end means please, chotto mate kudasai. And it really just means, would you wait a minute, please? And you would say this whenever you're trying to dig in your purse for the money and they're sitting there waiting. If you make them wait more than 1 second, just say, chotto mate kudasai, chotto mate kudasai. Arimasu. I have their money, and so here it is, right? And so, chotto mate kudasai, chotto mate kudasai. And they'll say that to you a lot, too. Very, very common word that you'll hear all the time. It's one of the first Japanese words phrases that I taught my family. And, of course, so as the kids grew up, they learned, first of all, chotto mate kudasai, chotto mate, chotto mate. I say it all the time. And so, chotto mate kudasai, that's a great phrase to learn. Oh, can you hold on just a second? That's what it really means. Hold on a second. Oh, I got it here. Here's the money. Oh, hang on for a second. I got to look it up on my phone. Or hang on for a second. I got to ask my wife if she wants that. Chotto mate kudasai. And then you can use that. All right. So there's a lot more politeness phrases. Those are the survival polite words. As promised, I want to give you a bonus tip here, and that is bowing. Now, I'm going to cover bowing in another video because there's a lot of complexity to it. But you know that Japanese people will bow, and I'm going to bow to you a little bit. If I'm thanking you for something, I say, arigatou gozaimasu, arigatou gozaimasu. Now, I'm bowing at the waist there, but that's pretty formal. That's what somebody would do when you go into a hotel and they're really just trying to roll out the red carpet for you. But you're probably not going to need to bow at the waist to anybody. If you do, it's a very slight bow. It's like, hi, arigatou gozaimasu. What you really want to think about bowing is more bowing at the neck, and that just puts your head down. That's good enough. And so if you just decline your head just a little bit and say, arigatou gozaimasu, then that's good enough. Arigatou gozaimasu. So look, hi, arigatou gozaimasu, arigatou. Okay, that's a kind of a bow, but it's bowing with your head. It's a good way to be polite to the Japanese people. So I hope this has been helpful to you. If it is, please subscribe. Just getting started on this channel. Like it. Let me know. Make some comments. Let me know what you want to see. I lived in Japan. I speak the language, and I love, love, love the Japanese people and their culture. So we'll see you next time. Take care.